He raised his glass to the crowd like he owned it. Like he'd built the rooftop brick by brick and then leased it back to the skyline out of generosity. Laughter circled him like vultures pretending to be sparrows. Even the moon seemed to lean in. I stood 10 feet away, unnoticed, holding a tray of half-melted ice and resentment. That tray wasn't supposed to be in my hands. I wasn't even supposed to be near the bar. But things don't always go as planned when your wife's new coworker thinks humiliation is a sport, and you're the ball. I'd already seen enough that night. The subtle way she adjusted her hair when he entered. The second glass of wine she didn't offer me. The hand on his shoulder that lingered 2 beats longer than workplace ethics would allow. I told myself it was nothing. I told myself that last week's late strategy session probably really did run long. I told myself a lot of things. But then I heard him say it. Loud enough for the table to laugh. Just quiet enough that I wasn't meant to hear it. She says he builds things. I assumed she meant ideas. Turns out he meant sheds. More laughter. Not hers, though. No, she didn't laugh. She didn't correct him either. She just sipped her wine and looked away like she'd never met me. That's when the tray slipped in my grip. Just for a second. Just enough to jolt my arm. To make the cubes crash like glass. Heads turned. His head turned. And I saw it then, the exact moment his eyes recognized me. Not as a guest. Not as her husband. As a problem. But what he didn't know, what no one there knew, was that I hadn't come alone. And that the person I walked in with, well, let's just say she wasn't there for wine. She adjusted her bracelet and leaned closer to me, whispering, "So which one is he?" Like we were picking targets at a charity auction. I didn't respond. I didn't have to. Her eyes were already locked on him. Mr. Perfect hair and mocking smirk, making his rounds like he was running for CEO of everybody's personal space. He shook hands too tightly, laughed too loudly, and if I didn't know better, I'd swear he practiced smiling in a mirror for the sole purpose of looking sincere when he wasn't. "Ah," she said, eyes narrowing. "The one who thinks he's untouchable. Got it." She was calm. Too calm. Like she already knew how this would go. I met her just 3 days earlier. Total accident. Or fate. Or maybe just rage with good timing. I was at a local hardware expo, my one escape from the world of polished nails and coffee served in glass, and I overheard 2 women talking near a display of solar generators. One was laughing bitterly about her ex-husband's boss. The other one, she wasn't laughing at all. She was taking notes. That second woman, Kira, had a voice like cold honey and eyes like blueprints. She was methodical, sharp, and when I told her what I suspected was going on between my wife and her coworker, she didn't flinch. She simply said, "Want to get even? I do strategy consulting for startups, but I can make an exception." I didn't even know what she meant until she slid a card into my hand. On the back, it just said, "Make them think they've won, then show them what they lost." I didn't plan to bring her. Honestly, I didn't think I had the guts. But that morning, after seeing yet another half-hidden text on my wife's phone, "Can't wait to see you tonight, smiling face with smiling eyes," sent at 1:12 a.m. from a contact named Clara, work, something in me snapped. Now here we were, walking the rooftop like chess pieces. Me, the pawn pretending to be oblivious. Kira, the queen no one saw coming. "You sure you're okay with this?" she asked as we lingered by the champagne tower. "Once we start, it's going to unravel fast. You ready to see who they really are?" I didn't answer. I couldn't. Because if I opened my mouth, I wasn't sure if words would come out or just the sound of something breaking. Across the rooftop, my wife and Carter, yeah, I learned his name, were standing far too close to be innocent. She laughed like she used to laugh with me, tilted her head like she used to tilt it on our couch when she'd listened to me ramble about engine parts one was excited to order. Now that look was his. That warmth was his. And yet, she hadn't even noticed I'd arrived. That's when Kira excused herself. 5 minutes, she whispered. Watch the ripple. She walked straight toward Carter like she'd known him her whole life. I watched him turn, surprised at first. Then, predictably, charmed. He smiled. She smiled wider. And then she leaned in and whispered something that made his expression change faster than a stock crash. He glanced over at me, then at my wife, then back at Kira. And in that moment, the entire balance of the room shifted. It was subtle, like the ground moved a quarter inch. But I felt it, because I saw something in Carter's face I hadn't seen all evening. Fear. The rooftop air had changed. People kept sipping their drinks and pretending nothing was wrong. But I could tell. Something had shifted. Like an invisible spotlight had suddenly moved, and no one knew who it was pointed at. Kira didn't come back right away. I expected her to return with a smug grin, maybe some witty one-liner about how predictable men like Carter were. But instead, she stayed in his orbit, playing whatever game she had mapped out in that terrifyingly brilliant head of hers. I saw her reach into her clutch, pull out her phone, and show him something. His face twitched. Just once. Barely a flinch. But it was there. Then he looked straight at my wife. Now here's the thing about Brielle. She's not the kind of woman who blushes easily. She controls rooms, reads people like spreadsheets. But when Carter's eyes landed on her, cold, suddenly distant, she flinched. And she knew. I don't know what Kira showed him. I wasn't sure I even wanted to. But whatever it was, it cracked the perfect little illusion they had built between them. I turned toward the champagne again, not because I wanted a drink, but because my hands were starting to shake. I had imagined this moment 1,000 times, what it would feel like to watch her guilt finally surface. I expected triumph, closure, but what I felt was nausea. Not because I doubted she deserved this, but because I still loved her. Or at least, I loved the version of her I used to know. The one who used to bring me coffee in the garage and wear my flannel shirts like armor when the world got too loud. Merrick. Her voice. Right behind me. I hadn't even heard her approach. I turned around slowly, still holding the empty glass. You came late, she said, forcing a smile. I didn't even see you. That was a lie. I'd been there for nearly an hour. And she had seen me. She just hadn't wanted to. Yeah, I said, voice cracking a little. Didn't want to interrupt your big night. She looked around, probably wondering if I'd spoken to anyone. If I knew anything. If I'd seen that little hand graze Carter's back. If I noticed how she still wore the necklace he gave her. The one she claimed she bought herself after her promotion. She always was a terrible liar when it came to details. You okay? She asked, cocking her head to the side like she was studying me for damage. I almost told her everything right there. About Kira. About the plan. About how I'd stop trying to win her back the moment she let someone else take my place at her side and in her mind. But I didn't. Instead, I smiled. I'm great. Just enjoying the show. Her smile froze. The show? Yeah, I said, gesturing subtly toward Carter and Kira, who were now deep in conversation by the balcony. You didn't tell me this was a team-building event. Seems like a lot of new dynamics forming tonight. Her mouth opened, but no words came out. Just a tiny breath, shallow and sharp, like the sound you make when you realize you're not in control of the scene anymore. Then her phone buzzed, loud enough to hear over the music. She glanced at the screen, and her entire face changed. Panic. I mean real panic. Not confusion, not annoyance. Panic that only comes when a secret you buried deep just clawed its way to the surface. She clutched the phone to her chest and walked off without another word. I let her go. Across the patio, Kira finally looked at me. She didn't smile. She didn't nod. She just tapped her watch once, slowly, like a silent countdown had started. And I realized then, this wasn't the climax. This was foreplay. I don't know how she made it down the stairs without tripping. Her heels were high, and her hands were shaking. I watched from the terrace as Brielle pushed through a group of interns near the bar, shielding her phone like it might explode. And in a way, it already had. Because what she saw, what someone sent her, wasn't just scandalous. It was surgical. I didn't send it. I didn't need to. That was Kira's part of the plan. She'd been gathering screenshots for days, harmless on their own, meaningless even, but devastating in context. A series of late-night work texts from Carter to my wife, laced with emojis and half-phrases. Flight confirmation numbers from weekends Brielle told me were team retreats. And most brutal of all, a selfie. In her car. In his driveway. Taken 3 hours after she told me her meeting ran over, and she'd crashed at Vanessa's. That image had no caption. It didn't need one. But Kira didn't just send it to Brielle. She sent it to everyone. Or rather, she let the system do it. See, her consulting job? It wasn't just startups. She had done freelance infrastructure audits for several medium-sized firms, ones exactly like the one Brielle worked at. She understood how internal mailing lists worked, who had reply-all privileges, who was on the external partner distribution lists. And when she'd casually mentioned she was dating someone from the tech compliance department, well, let's just say that wasn't small talk. I don't know exactly what message got triggered. All I know is that one moment people were sipping rose and the next, Phones were buzzing like fire alarms. First one beep, then five, then a chorus. Heads dropped to screens. Conversations stopped mid-sentence. I saw a manager near the DJ booth mutter, "Oh my God," under his breath. The director of operations let out a low whistle and turned toward Carter, who was, at that exact moment, standing under a string of Edison bulbs, looking like a man who just got handed his own obituary. Kira walked past me without slowing down. "It's done," she said softly. "Now watch them run." I didn't move. I didn't speak. I just stood there, stunned, as the crowd turned in on itself, like an elegant building collapsing in slow motion. Carter's confident smile was gone, replaced by a twitch in his jaw and a pale shine to his forehead. He fumbled with his phone like it had betrayed him personally. Then came the murmurs. "Did you see who it was from? Wait, was that her husband? Oh no, Carter's married, right? No, she is." It was beautiful in the ugliest way possible. A symphony of shock and shame. And that's when someone tapped me on the shoulder. I turned around to find a man in a burgundy vest and name tag, Jonas Hendrickson, Executive Director of People and Culture. "Sir," he said, voice polite but clipped, "would you mind stepping inside for a moment? There's something we'd like to clarify." I blinked at him, then glanced around. Everyone was looking in our direction now. Brielle had stopped halfway across the patio, like she'd hit a wall of invisible heat. Carter was already heading for the exit, his phone pressed tight against his ear, probably trying to call a lawyer or bury the evidence or both. I nodded. "Sure. Let's clarify." Jonas led me through a set of glass doors and into a lounge that smelled like lemon oil and overpriced upholstery. A woman in a blazer joined us, someone I recognized from the company's website. VP of Brand Strategy or something like that. She didn't look angry. She looked intrigued. "Merrick, right?" she asked. I nodded again, heart racing. "Are you aware of what just circulated to our entire staff?" "I might have an idea," I said, trying to keep my hands from fidgeting. She tilted her head and studied me. The timing, the format, the recipient lists, it wasn't random. Someone built that drop on the inside. "I didn't send it," I said quickly. "I didn't touch anyone's system." "We know," Jonas replied. "We're not accusing you. But someone used internal credentials to trigger the message. And it included," he hesitated, "evidence. Serious evidence. Which, depending on what comes out next, may require an HR investigation. Possibly legal action." The woman leaned forward. "We'd like to know, off the record, how much more is coming." I just stared at her, my heart doing gymnastics. Because the truth was, I didn't know. Kira never told me how deep her folder went. But I knew this much. Whatever happened next, my wife would no longer be the one in control. They didn't escort me out. Not exactly. But once Jonas and the other execs were done peppering me with questions they pretended weren't legal in nature, one of the junior HR reps politely suggested I return to the main event to avoid any further confusion. Like I was the confused one. Like I had accidentally wandered into their curated bubble of cocktails and betrayal and dropped a ticking truth bomb. I stepped back onto the rooftop and the music was still playing, but no one was dancing anymore. People were now in clusters, not groups, clusters, huddled around phones and conversations that paused the second I got close. Some eyes met mine. Some didn't. I wasn't sure which was worse. Brielle found me before I made it 10 steps. She was holding her clutch like it might shatter if she let go. Her lipstick was smudged, and her left earring was missing. She looked small. I'd never seen her look small before. Even when she was wrong, she was confident, calculated. But tonight, she looked like a woman whose mask was peeling, and underneath, there wasn't much left. "We need to talk," she said, not asking. Demanding. Still trying to lead. "I think we're a little past that," I replied, calm. Too calm. Even I could hear the shift in my own voice. Something in me had hardened. Maybe cracked. She pulled me toward the edge of the patio, behind a tall plant wall, just out of earshot. And then she stared at me like she expected me to explain myself. "What the hell was that, Merrick?" I laughed. Not because it was funny, but because I couldn't believe she still thought she could frame the story like I had done something wrong. "Be more specific," I said. "The group-wide exposure of your late-night rendezvous? The texts? Or was it the part where Carter bolted like a cockroach in daylight?" "Don't do this," she hissed, looking around. "You humiliated me in front of everyone." "No," I said, voice low. "You did that. Months ago, when you started lying." When you started sneaking around and gaslighting me. When you made me feel like I was crazy for asking who Clara was, or why your perfume was different after late meetings. You did that. I just handed you the mirror. She didn't speak. For once, she didn't have a counterpoint locked and loaded. Just a trembling lower lip and a heart racing so loud I could practically hear it. I made a mistake, she finally whispered. Carter, it wasn't what you think. Oh good, I said. Then maybe you can explain what I'm supposed to think when the guy I suspect you've been cheating with refers to me as the tool guy, and your car's in his driveway at midnight. Her mouth opened, closed, opened again. Then came the tears. You don't understand, she said, voice cracking. I've been under so much pressure lately. With the promotions. With expectations. I felt alone, Merrick. I felt like you didn't see me anymore. That line. That exact line. That was the one cheaters practiced. I've read enough forum posts and late-night Reddit confessions to recognize the script. You felt unseen, I repeated. And your solution was to make sure I disappeared entirely? I'm sorry, she whispered. I didn't mean for it to go this far. And maybe that's when it happened. That moment when the fog lifted. Because for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel weak in her presence. I didn't feel like I had to prove anything. I just looked at her, mascara streaked, expensive dress clinging awkwardly in the night air, and felt a kind of clarity I hadn't had in years. You didn't mean for you to get caught, I said. There's a difference. She reached for my hand. I stepped back. And just then, her phone buzzed again. She looked at it, froze, then slowly tilted the screen so I could see. From Anonymous. Subject, Part 2. If exposure was a spark, this will be the wildfire. Click the link. Watch before it's removed. No name, no number, just a private server link and a one-time access code. She didn't open it. Not right away. Her thumb hovered, afraid to touch it. Because she knew. Whatever Carter had done, whatever she thought was the worst part, she had no idea how much deeper it went. And neither did I. But Kira did. She was just getting started. She opened the link. Not right away, not in that frantic, desperate way you'd expect. No. She tapped it with the same hesitant dread of someone checking a test result they already suspect is positive. I watched her expression shift in real time, from uncertainty to horror to something quieter, a private devastation she couldn't even begin to hide. She didn't let me see the screen. She turned slightly away, as if shielding me from what was inside would somehow soften the blow. But it was too late for that. I had nothing left to shield. I just stood there, waiting, watching her shoulders rise and fall like she'd been punched in the stomach. Twice. The video couldn't have been long. Maybe 20 seconds. But that's the thing about truth. It doesn't need to be long. It just needs to be clear. When she finally looked at me, her face was pale, her jaw trembling. I didn't know she recorded it, she muttered. I didn't respond. Because honestly, I didn't know what it was. Not exactly. But my gut told me everything I needed to know. Kira had promised escalation, but I didn't expect her to pull this thread. Not publicly. Not yet. It was just once, Brielle said suddenly, like she could still get ahead of it. It was stupid. I was drunk. It didn't even mean anything. I didn't flinch. Didn't blink. Just once, I echoed quietly. That's the story you're going with. She swallowed hard. It wasn't like that. You weren't supposed to. I mean, no one was supposed to see it. And yet, I said, everyone has. Because as we stood there, behind the potted shrubs and clinking glasses of a rooftop celebration that had turned into a disaster recovery scene, the ripple of that video was just beginning. I didn't need to watch it. I already knew what it contained. Kira had hinted, back when we were first scheming, that Carter and Brielle had gotten sloppy. That their little affair had spilled into work in ways more dangerous than private texts and overnight visits. There had been an off-site retreat. One of those leadership getaways filled with forced vulnerability and expensive wine. And somewhere in the haze of that weekend, a hotel balcony, a half-open sliding door, and a roommate who didn't sleep soundly. That's when the footage was born. Audio only, but unmistakable. Carter's voice, her laugh, words whispered between sips of champagne and arrogance. Promises made. Complaints about the husband who doesn't understand her pace. A few seconds of movement. And then silence, the kind of silence you can feel. Brielle slumped down onto the edge of a decorative planter like her knees had finally given up. I stayed standing. She buried her face in her hands and whispered something I couldn't make out. I didn't ask her to repeat it. I need to talk to Kira, she finally said. I need to make it right. Or stop it. Something. I couldn't help myself. I laughed. You want to negotiate with the woman you helped betray? I didn't even know her, she snapped, eyes wide with that old fire. The one that used to be seductive, but now just looked like denial with lip gloss. No, I said. But she knows you. I started walking away. Merrick, wait, she called out. But her voice was thin, like a thread unraveling. I didn't turn around. Not until I heard someone else approach from the opposite direction. It was Jonas again, the HR guy. But this time, he wasn't alone. Behind him, holding a folder and a phone, was someone in a black suit with a company badge clipped to his chest. I didn't recognize the face, but from the posture and the way people cleared a path for him, I didn't need an introduction. Legal. I believe we need to have another conversation, Jonas said carefully, glancing between me and Brielle. I nodded slowly, but before I could follow, Brielle stood. I'll go, she said quickly. I'll explain everything. Just, please, don't drag him into it. He didn't know. He's not part of this. They ignored her. We're not here for him, the man in the black suit said, eyes locked on her. You'll be contacted in the morning. You may want to speak with a representative before then. Brielle's knees buckled slightly again, and Jonas caught her arm. I stepped back, watching the scene unfold like a spectator at someone else's trial. Because I was. And for once, I wasn't the defendant. I didn't sleep that night. Not because I was upset. Not exactly. The rage had already drained out of me. It was something else now. Something colder. I watched the ceiling of my apartment for hours, listening to the hum of the fridge, the occasional creak of the old water heater kicking on. The kind of sounds you forget when you're used to someone else breathing beside you. But she wasn't there anymore. After the rooftop imploded, Brielle went home alone. Or to a hotel. Or to whoever still returned her calls after that video circulated. I didn't ask. The truth is, I didn't need answers anymore. I already had the one thing she never thought I'd get back, dignity. But what I didn't have was Kira. She ghosted me. No texts. No calls. No smug follow-ups. No final told you so, or victory lap. Just silence. Like she'd vanished into the same digital mist she'd risen from. And the more I thought about it, the more it gnawed at me. Because for someone who orchestrated the collapse of an entire department, she walked away with no fanfare. 2 days passed. On the third, a letter arrived. Not an email. A real letter. Thick envelope. No return address. Just my name, written in strong cursive across the front. Inside, a note on unmarked stationery. Merrick, you asked me once why I helped you. You assumed it was sympathy. Or maybe shared pain. But it wasn't. This wasn't about you at all. Carter didn't just ruin your marriage. He ruined someone else's life long before yours. Someone who trusted him. Someone I loved. He walked away clean. Until now. No signature. Just a second slip of paper folded inside. A photo. Carter. Younger. Smirking. Arm around a woman who looked a little like Kira, but not quite. Same eyes, but softer. Lighter. On the back, in small pencil. She took her life in 2019. He told everyone she was unstable. That she made it up. I sat down slowly, my legs giving out before my brain caught up. Because suddenly it all made sense. The precision. The cold patience. The layers. Kira didn't help me to help me. She helped me because I was a convenient vehicle to destroy a man she'd been hunting for years. I was the final piece. The grieving husband. The one still clinging to the edge while someone like Carter picked at his fingers. And when I stopped needing revenge, that's when she struck. It should have made me feel used. But it didn't. It made me feel like I mattered to someone's justice, even if I was just a cog in the machine. Later that day, I received an anonymous tip in my inbox. Someone forwarded me a screenshot of a press release. Performance Integration Group launches formal misconduct inquiry following anonymous whistleblower reports. Executive leaves position effective immediately. No name mentioned, but we both knew who it was. And Brielle? She texted me the next night. Just a single line. I didn't deserve what you did to me. I stared at it for a while. Not because I didn't know what to say, but because I finally realized. I didn't need to say anything. Because somewhere out there, someone like Kira was already moving on to her next target. And the woman who thought she held all the power? She was just another forgotten casualty in someone else's campaign. The knock on my door came at 8:14 p.m. Not a text. Not a call. A real knock. Hesitant. Measured. The kind people use when they're not sure if they're welcome, or if the person on the other side has anything left to give. I almost didn't open it. But curiosity, habit, and maybe a trace of leftover affection got the better of me. There she was. Brielle. No makeup. No blazer. Hair tied back. She looked more like the woman I married than the one who tore through boardrooms and wine-fueled retreats. But she also looked smaller. Like she'd been carrying too much shame in too little space. "Can I come in?" she asked. I hesitated, then stepped aside. She walked into the kitchen, glanced at the same old, chipped mug she used to tease me for keeping, and sat down in the chair she once called hers. I stayed standing. "I'm not here to fight," she said softly. I didn't respond. I just wanted to say thank you. That caught me off guard. She looked up, and her eyes were wet but steady. "For not burning me worse than you could have. For not posting everything. For not showing the world all the things I know you found. You held back, and I don't think I deserved that." I took a deep breath and finally sat down across from her. "You were my wife," I said, "for 11 years. I didn't want to destroy you, Brielle. I just wanted to stop being invisible." She nodded, slowly, gratefully. "I've started seeing someone," I said after a moment. Her eyes flickered, but she didn't flinch. "Not romantically. A therapist." That surprised her. "Oh, yeah. She's helping me figure out how I lost myself long before you cheated. How I stopped asking for what I needed. How I made your silence feel like my fault." She wiped at her eyes. "I'm proud of you," she whispered. "I really am." And I believed her. For once, I didn't feel like she was trying to fix a narrative. There was no spin left. Just two people sitting in the ruins of something they both broke in different ways. "I'm leaving the company," she added after a pause. "They didn't fire me. But I offered to go. I think I need to start over. Somewhere no one knows me as her." I nodded. That made sense. We sat in silence for a while. The good kind. Then she stood. "I won't bother you again," she said. "I just needed to say it. Thank you. For being better than I was." I walked her to the door. She turned before stepping out. "You were never the background character, Merrick. I just didn't know how to see you anymore." And then she was gone. I stood there for a moment, watching the hallway. Then I closed the door and smiled. Not because I'd won, not because she'd lost, but because, for the first time in years, I felt whole. And I wasn't going to lose that again.